Archaeologists never cease to amaze us. This time, they managed to unravel the mystery of the medieval wanderer, to find out why people in ancient times broke shale rings, how food was found or not found, and what artifacts were found underwater, which are more than 18,000 years old. Watch the video till the end, you will definitely like it. Hi friend, you are on the KirTop channel. Why did people break shale rings? Archaeologists from the University of Helsinki have examined more than 200 previously discovered slate rings and their fragments dating back to the 4th millennium BC. It turned out that in the Stone Age, these items were not just decorations or ritual goods. They were specially cut into fragments and divided among several people to indicate kinship or other social ties. Shale or tuff rings were common over 6,000 years ago among hunter-gatherers in northeastern Europe. 246 such objects have been found on the territory of today's Finland. Archaeologists often find various artifacts in a fragmented state, but in this case, they doubted that the rings had already collapsed in the ground or from antiquity on their own. Experts found and studied traces of tools and processing at the ends of the fragments of the rings and confirmed that these fragments were cut intentionally. Then a hole was made in them, probably for wearing on a cord or sewn to clothes. Scientists have suggested that this jewelry was never intended to be used as whole rings. Instead, they denoted parts of one whole. People who belonged to the same group, clan, or some other community received the pieces. Also, some rings have been found in Stone Age burials. According to archaeologists, there is an example when two fragments of the same ring were found in neighboring graves, which could indicate the relationship of the buried. One part was never found. Apparently, at the time of the funeral, one more person remained alive. With the help of X-ray fluorescence analysis, it was possible to establish that the jewelry comes from present-day Russia, from the shores of Lake Onega. From there, they were delivered hundreds of kilometers through an extensive network of exchanges. Products differ in chemical composition and design. The remains of the largest megaraptor in history. A team of paleontologists led by Mauro Aranciaga Rolando have recovered the skeleton of one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs known to science. It was discovered back in 2019, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, excavations had to be postponed. The extinct monster was named Macrothorax in honor of the evil spirit from the mythology of the Patagonian people Tulce. The remains found indicate that the dinosaur had a length of up to 10 meters and a weight of about 5 tons, which made it an incredibly dangerous predator. For comparison, other megaraptors were up to 8 meters long and were only a meter taller than a person, but at the same time, they were incredibly efficient when hunting. Outwardly, megaraptors looked like tyrannosaurs, with which they were confused in the past, but new research points to two fundamental differences. First, the bones of megaraptors were partially hollow, which made them excellent runners. Secondly, the small forelimbs were actually very developed, and with the help of claws up to 35 centimeters long, the raptors could inflict terrible wounds on their prey. There is a version that megaraptors could even grab their victims and tear them apart without using their mouth, because their teeth are rather small. Probably these predators relied on the speed and strength of their claws, and their size allowed them to hunt almost any fowl that lived on the territory of modern Argentina 70 million years ago. How people found or didn't find food. A new analysis of ancient predators' remains by Rice University provides new insights into how prehistoric humans found or didn't find their food. The behavior of the saber-tooth when consuming carcasses and the dynamics of large Pleistocene gills of carnivores' work was published in scientific reports. For more than 3 decades, archaeologists have believed that one of the potential sources of meat, which was crucial for early human brain development, was the flesh left behind by saber-toothed cats. Until recently, researchers believed that prehistoric humans stripped the flesh from abandoned animal carcasses for food, but these ancient remains suggest that that was not the case. A new fossil study from 1.5 million years ago shows that saber-toothed cats completely consumed the flesh of their prey and even ate some of the bones. These legendary predators, so named because of their huge upper fangs, roamed the landscapes of Africa, Eurasia, and America from the Miocene to the late Pleistocene. Manuel Dominguez Rodrigo, visiting professor of anthropology at Rice and the first author of the study, along with his colleagues, was able to determine the feeding habits of these prehistoric cats based on their skeletons and those of their prey. Dominguez Rodrigo says the discovery is significant because it means that early humans used different ways to find protein sources. This provides further support for the idea that early humans were already successful hunters. Biggest ichthyosaur tooth. This tooth is huge by ichthyosaur standards. Its root was 60 mm in diameter. The largest specimen still in a complete skull today was 20 mm and belonged to an ichthyosaur that was almost 18 meters long. However, estimating the size of an ichthyosaur from its teeth alone is not an easy task because the most toothy species are often not the largest. The fact is that marine predators with large teeth often spend a lot of energy hunting, while giant filterine predators can afford to swim slowly, collecting the smallest prey. Other record finds in the Alps include the largest trunk vertebrae in Europe, rivaling even the 21 meters Schistosaurus cercaniensis, the largest ichthyosaur fossil ever found. However, the researchers know that they need new finds of ichthyosaur fossils to complete the picture. 18,000 years underwater. At the time of another underwater exploration, divers made a sensational discovery. Quite by chance, they found a previously unknown passage which is located between the Dosius Caves and the Sa-Akti cave system. Sailing into this tunnel, they found many different artifacts. The divers immediately reported their find to the local authorities, and those in turn passed the information to archaeologists. A group of divers was engaged in the study of underwater caves. The total length of the passages is 372 kilometers. They are located near the Mexican resort of Tulum and are a huge cave system. Most of it is filled with water. This gives it the right to be the second longest of the Mammoth Cave in the United States. The water in the cave contains a large amount of minerals, because of which living creatures cannot live in it. The news delighted archaeologists, and they immediately assumed that they would find many valuable artifacts from different eras and centuries in these places. Their intuition did not fail them. Scientists began research as soon as possible and immediately discovered more than 200 sites that store various archaeological remains in the form of human bones, animal fossils, and even Mayan household items. According to preliminary data, the length of the newly discovered cave is 80 kilometers. Archaeologists, without hesitation, call this place a real treasury because objects that are about 18,000 years old are stored here. At the same time, do not forget that since the Ice Age, the level of the world's oceans has risen by more than 100 meters. Therefore, we can safely establish that for ancient people, these places served as a refuge and home. The divers managed to find Mayan altars and incense burners. Items from earlier eras were also found. Fossils of 20 animal species of the late Pleistocene. The finds included the remains of 14 prehistoric fires. To what period they belong is still unknown. An interesting find was the tools that have not been studied to date. According to scientists, the age of the found artifacts coincides with the end of the last ice age, 11,700 years ago. At the moment, this place is closed to the public, as it is extremely important to conduct research without prying eyes. At the same time, experts expressed the hope that this is not the last discovery of those places. Drawings can rewrite the history of a city. In Turkey, about 2 kilometers from the ancient city of Alinda, a group of archaeologists discovered a cave in the nutria of which turned out to be rock paintings capable of rewriting the history of the ancient city, whose age was considered to be early 3,500 years. Now the discovered drawings can completely change the history of the city. After their study, scientists dated them to the 5th millennium BC. Before that, scientists were sure that the city of Alinda arose about 3,500 years ago. ago. But now, judging by the drawings, people appeared here much earlier as previously thought, that is, about 7,000 years ago. The cave was discovered during field work in the area. Scientists did not think that they would find a real sensation inside it. In addition to rock paintings, handy materials were found inside the cave, which were most likely used in antiquity. On the walls were depicted human-like figures that scientists have yet to identify. But scientists have already established that images of both men and women were painted on the walls of the cave. But what exactly they depict remains unclear. Scientists still have a lot of work to do before they can unravel the mystery of the drawings. The ancient city of Alinda was once considered one of the largest trading centers in Anatolia. In the center of the city, there was a huge market square where, in addition to selling goods, meetings were also held. Olive oil and figs were produced in large quantities in the city. All these goods were traded throughout the Hellenistic world, and now it turns out that the city arose much earlier than scientists thought, which means that scientists are waiting for new excavations and studies of both the city itself and its environs. 1,100-year-old skull altar. In 2012, Mexican authorities first discovered a cave that contained about 150 human skulls. The police then thought it was a modern crime scene and planned to open an investigation. Now a new study has revealed that the skulls found were likely the result of ritual human sacrifices performed 1,100 years ago. How can you confuse an archaeological find with a crime scene? The fact is that the skulls of pre-Hispanic indigenous cultures were often found badly damaged. Usually they were split and placed in ceremonial circles. However, these skulls remained completely intact. Police also believed that the cave of Frontera Comalapa was the perfect place for local gangs to hide bodies. Researchers have found that the skulls from the cave are much older than police thought. They date from between 900 and 1200 AD. The teeth of the skulls were removed, which was in accordance with the customs of that time. Scholars believe that the site was once home to a tzopantle, or altar of skulls. These are structures that were used by Mesoamerican civilizations to place the skulls of captives or perform sacrifices. Most often, tzopantle were made of wood, so over time, almost no traces of them remained. Archaeologists continue to work in the area in the hope of finding similar altars or any other artifacts from those times. Mystery of the medieval wanderer. Scientists from the University of Aberdeen, after a recent study, have established how the famous medieval wanderer ended up in Edinburgh. We are talking about a man whose remains dating back to the 6th century AD, along with 13 other people, were discovered in 1975 under a parking lot. Then it was believed that this was a local family that had become a victim of the plague. Now the analysis, which was carried out by experts, showed that the medieval wanderer was not associated with the rest of the group and arrived in the capital of Scotland from the Southern Highlands or Loch Lomond. Ursula Sherry, the head of the research, noted that this discovery was the key to obtaining information about the movements of people in early medieval Scotland and beyond. We know little about the life of the people at that time, but we know for sure that it was a politically and socially turbulent period. Traveling and getting around was not easy back then. Sherry and her team also determined that several members of the group, including the medieval wanderer, had died in agony. They made such a conclusion after studying the skulls. Most likely they were hit with some kind of blunt object which led to a fatal outcome. This evidence provides important confirmation that the period under review was characterized by high levels of violence. The specialists plan to continue their work to get even more information and learn more about the history of Scotland in the Middle Ages. Found an ancient underground shelter. Scientists have found an ancient underground city where the first Christians hid, and it is, not surprisingly, in Turkey. A couple of years ago, under the Turkish city of Midyat, research began on a large-scale cave complex. Local residents knew about the existence of the caves themselves, but had no idea about the scale of the underground structures. First, archaeologists found a corridor in one of the caves, which led to the dungeon. In the underground city, altars, warehouses used for provisions, wells, as well as a network of tunnels were found. Presumably, the first Christians hit here almost 2000 years ago from the persecution of the Roman Empire. At that time, this region was part of the Roman state, and the city of Midyat was located in the province of Assyria. Scholars believe that Christians who were initially fleeing persecution used the underground city after the collapse of the Roman Empire to hide from numerous wars that eventually led to the Islamization of the region. According to archaeologists, the underground city ceased to exist after the genocide of Armenians, who are also Christians, occurred in 1915. Ancient remains from the time of the death of dinosaurs. Paleontologists have discovered the first ever fossilized remains of a dinosaur that died on the day a massive asteroid hit Earth 66 million years ago. Scientists have discovered the leg of ichthyosaur, a small herbivorous dinosaur, next to a fragment of a giant meteorite that killed it. Experts believe that the scanned limb was most likely torn off in the fall of the giant Chicxulub asteroid and then buried in the fallen debris on the day of the fall. Ichthyosaur's fossilized leg was discovered along with a series of unique artifacts at the Tanis fossil site in the US state of North Dakota, known as the Hell Creek Formation. This site, which was first discovered in 2008, is unusual in that it actually recorded events from the first minutes to hours after the Chicxulub impact in great detail. Paleontologists say this is the first discovery of a dinosaur that was the victim of the famous asteroid impact, which created an impact crater about 150 kilometers wide in what is now the Gulf of Mexico. They also believe that they have discovered a tiny fragment of the space rock that ended the age of dinosaurs and led to the emergence of mammals. Among the finds in Tanis are unique specimens, a fish with small fragments from a meteorite impact in its respiratory tract, a petrified turtle pierced with a wooden stake, and the skin of a horned triceratops. Professor Paul Barrett of the Natural History Museum in London said the preserved leg once belonged to a dinosaur from the genus Chicxulub, whose name translates to wonderful lizard. Before, we didn't have reliable knowledge of what their skin looked like. This find shows very convincingly that these animals were scaly like lizards. They were not covered in feathers like their meat-eating contemporaries. The study shows that something very quickly turned off the leg of the animal. There are no signs of disease on the leg, no obvious pathologies, no signs of eating the leg such as bite marks or missing pieces. So the best idea we have is that this animal died more or less instantly. Tanis was discovered in 2008, but it was until 2019 that it was announced to the general public. The distance between Tanis and the site of the Chicxulub impact crater in the present-day Gulf of Mexico off the Yucatan Peninsula is more than 2,500 kilometers, but the force of impact in a collision with a meteorite was such that it was reflected throughout the planet. This video has come to an end, but there are many other videos on the channel about the finds of archaeologists. Rate this video with a thumbs up or down and leave your kind comments. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!